about what you did, the results you achieved, and also the criticism you faced, a little bit maybe, during that process.
Well, thank you for the honor of having this film be shown in beautiful Tampa. It is truly an honor. I know that you're very grateful. What I love about the film is it puts a human context on something that nerdy policy people think about from a policy perspective. And I have a confession to make. I'm one of those nerdy policy people. So this is a much more effective way of communicating the challenges that our country faces. And my journey in this started long before I ran for governor, but as a candidate, I outlined a plan and was given the chance to, because of great support with great leadership in the Florida legislature, was given the authority to implement the plan. And then with great partners, I see Jim Horn, who was a commissioner of education here, and others at the local level, we had a chance to then execute on that. So it was one of those crazy things. I know it's not happening that much these days, where you actually have an idea, the idea turns into a law, the law then turns into a set of rules, and then you execute with dogged determination the implementation of that. That's what happened in Florida, and then we ended up having the opportunity to do it again and again and again. We didn't stop, and so we grade schools 100% based on student learning. We have 4 or 5 school choice programs, some of the largest in the country. We put a focus on early childhood literacy because gaps grow very quickly. Since my time, thanks to the leadership of the legislature and Governor Scott, there's now a teacher evaluation system that eliminates tenure, that moves to a model where you reward improvement in terms of learning gains based on students. Another radical idea apparently in America today. But these things have created huge gains in learning. And all of this is about student learning, and that's had all this stuff that was considered radical at the time failed, had we not had dramatic gains in learning, I wouldn't be sitting here, you wouldn't be wanting to hear from me, and we'd be spending more money or we'd be trying something different. But robust accountability, empowering parents with choice, a focus on students learning. Now I think with the impact of digital learning, the chance to bring technology into the classroom offers the best hope to assure that more than 1/3 of our kids are college and or career ready by the time they complete 12th grade. And that's what we have to do. We have 1/3 of our kids that are college or career ready, in spite of spending more per student than any country in the world. Now, we can say, you know, USA #1, and we can be proud that we won all these gold medals, and we can brag about our country, but if the foundation of our country is not just cracking, it's coming apart, because 2/3 of our kids won't be able to be successful in life, then shame on us. I mean, it's shameful. And so I hope that these leaders, we need to take this out of the political context and move it towards something where it's the top priority of parents and change how we organize ourselves around the next generation before it's too late. So I'm still hanging in there with this stuff because I think it's important.
So let me just ask you, there are a lot of states that are in the process of trying to take on a lot of things that you were able to accomplish, and you went through a long list. Prioritize, because you can't do it all at one time, we're finding. What do you think is the most important step?
So I would say accountability, that there's a consequence that's different between excellence, mediocrity, improvement, failure. 4 things can happen generally. You should have a dramatically different consequence in each case. And everything ought to be aligned around student learning. So if you start there, then you start saying, well, shouldn't we give parents more choices, public and private? Who cares? Who cares? If they're empowered to make these choices, is it the system that we have to protect, or do we want to empower parents, particularly parents that don't have the resources to be able to do what's right for their kids? And then you move to a system where Michelle has been the true leader in the country about compensation and how we treat teachers. Great teachers seem to leave more often than not. Mediocre teachers, you know, are organized around their pensions way too often than not. We're moving, the states are making big changes, but that would be the third element of change that is taking place. And the fourth would be something we were carrying when I was first governor. We had cell phones that were this big, so I'm that old, you know. Now you have technology that soon there will be no digital divide. I mean, basically people can access high quality content in all sorts of ways, which has the chance to radically change education. So those would be the four things that generally have to happen kind of in increments or, you know, building on one another. The final thing I'd say is just politics seems foreign for most people. I think it's weird and it is a little strange, to be honest with you, but any leadership chance creates the chance to succeed, and good leaders don't stop. They build from that platform the next iteration and the next, and you have continuous improvement. In your business, that's the nature of it. It's always changing. And in politics, sometimes people in public life say, okay, I can check that off. You know, I got education done. I said I'd do this, and then I move on. And that's the wrong thing. It should be success is never final, reform is never complete. You got to be in their face 24/7, pushing, fighting if need be, trying to convince, cajole, persuade. And when you do that, you can get the kind of results that Florida has gotten, not just during my tenure, but afterwards as well. I mean, I give credit to those that you know, were delighted I left and continued to do the job in a different way, because they deserve the praise.
Michelle, let me bring you into this and start by just telling people a little bit about your journey too. A lot of people may be familiar with you from Waiting for Superman, and as you very often. But walk us through what got you from your job as chancellor in DC to Students First.
Sure. So I had the privilege of serving as the chancellor of the DC Public Schools for 3.5 years under a phenomenal mayor, Adrian Fenty, who was a hero, honestly, not only of the education reform movement, but of the nation. He was a Democrat who had grown up, was born and raised in Washington, D.C., had seen the fact that the nation's capital was the lowest performing and most dysfunctional school district in the entire nation, and thought that that was an absolute crime and decided to do something about it. So he put all of his political capital behind making sure that he was going to improve the school system as his #1 priority in office. And he absolutely did that. And in doing that, took on all of the special interests and the defenders of the status quo, who quite frankly were benefiting from the dysfunction. I think people underestimate that. I think a lot of people think that school districts become dysfunctional sort of by accident. But what you have to realize is that there are a lot of people out there who benefit from having a dysfunctional school district. People who get to keep their jobs, or companies who get to keep their contracts even though they're not producing anything, because there's absolutely no accountability, to the governor's point. So we went in, we shook things up, we decided to take a wildly different stance, that we were going to completely put politics aside, which in education is a very difficult thing to do, and we decided that we were going to run the school district in a way where we made every decision based on what we believed was in the best interests of children. And that caused a lot of consternation with people, because it meant that what we were doing was we were closing down lots of low-performing schools. Closing schools is one of the most unpopular things that you can do if you're a politician. We were removing a lot of people from their positions. And we were taking on some really sensitive political topics. For example, in Washington, D.C., there was a publicly funded voucher program in the city, which allowed a few thousand children who lived in poverty to escape their failing schools, take those vouchers and go to high-performing private schools. And as a Democrat, both the mayor and I, struggled with that, because as Democrats, Democrats don't like vouchers, we're against that, and I had in my mind all of the reasons why vouchers didn't make sense from a political and a policy standpoint. But when I got into office and I was in a position where I was talking on a day-to-day basis with parents who had done everything that we would want parents to do. They first would research their neighborhood school, and they'd find out that only 10% of the children at that neighborhood school were performing on grade level. And they'd say, absolutely not. My kid has a 90% chance of failure if they go to that school. It's not good enough. So then they'd take the next step that we told them to, which was they would apply through the out-of-boundary